right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button so that you never miss an episode like today's episode with EJ Snyder. EJ, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Doug. Thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about it. For those that don't know, EJ's a Bears fan. What's he doing on a Commanders? Well, he's also one half of the Bootleg Football podcast with Brett Coleman, and they just got through wrapping up the NFC East. So I thought, who better to have on than EJ? So there are two ways to do this, EJ. One is to watch the show and then discuss. I like not watching. I'll go back and watch the show when we're done. But this way I kind of can get excited about hearing about your thoughts before then. Be fresh for me. So that's where I'm at. So if I look surprised, I am surprised. I have not watched it, but I will. And for those of you not watching the Bootleg Show, please, you must do it. It is a must watch. EJ, how long have you guys been doing that show now?
We're coming up on just about 6 years. So yeah, I've been at it. Definitely some road under the tires, and doing the summer preview series every year is what really gets us ready to cover the entire league, which is what we do on Bootleg.
What is the boot? I know you've got the Bears podcast. How many episodes a week do you guys do during the regular season for Bootleg?
We will do 3. There'll be 2 public and 1 for our patrons. So we'll have a recap show that is public for everything that went on the previous weekend. And then we'll have 2 preview shows this year. We'll, I think, preview 3 games publicly and either 2 or 3 for our patrons. So we'll be putting out 3 shows a week. Okay.
How long did it take for each of these division preview segments?
Oh, that's a good question. The actual recording time is just under probably 2 hours. I think we're a lot more efficient than we used to be there. But in terms of research, this year we did more than we ever have. We put out full infographics for every team, which was somewhere between 15 and 18 pages for every team, with tendencies, scheme alignments, personnel, spending, you name it. And we made that available to patrons. That took many hours. We actually employed a couple of guys to do some research for us because of the load of that, but just research for the rest of the episode. Brett doing scheme stuff, me doing coaches and the draft, and calculating the Bootleg power score, all that. I would say it probably takes 3 to 4 hours total to put together those pieces, not including the researcher's time. And then there's the actual shooting time, editing time, proofing, and publishing time. So 40 episodes in 40 straight business days is bananas, and we kind of have to forget how much it hurts every year, so we'll do it again.
Yes, there's pleasure in the pain, as they say. Well, we're here to talk about the NFC East, obviously. Let's start right from the most important part. How do you have this group ranked out?
Yeah, Eagles are still on top for me. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who's been watching Howie and the Eagles organization for a while now. It is a well-run show, top to bottom, and they're going to be tough to catch because of that. So I have the Eagles on top. I have the Commanders in second, but it's tenuous. I really think the Giants are going to take a leap this year. It really does depend on their quarterback situation. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think they're going to make a big jump, a big enough jump to catch the Commanders, who I think will naturally regress a little bit, not a lot. Again, Commanders, as you well know, exceeded pretty much everybody's expectations last year. So even if they fall off a little bit, they're still ahead of schedule. It's not a bad thing. It's just something that naturally happens when people sort of have a book on you, and they do on Dan Quinn and the offense a little bit as well. Again, Commanders will continue to progress. So I have them in, it's like 2A, 2B. I really think the Giants could push. Depends on how hard the Commanders hold on, I guess is a way to put that. And then Cowboys bringing up the rear for me in the last. I just think they have more issues than they can probably overcome. And a lot of those have to do with depth behind the star power. If they suffer injuries, and they seem to every year, I don't think they have enough firepower in their backups to make that up.
That's the biggest problem for the Cowboys currently in your mind, is the depth.
The Micah thing is obviously the biggest problem for them. They'll solve that eventually, I'm sure. I I have trouble believing he won't be a Cowboy when it's all said and done. And he is a game-changing player. He is a top 5 player in the NFL, and having him can tilt the field for you. That's made obvious by their defensive statistics when he is with them and when he is not with them. Markedly different, about a 15-point drop overall in their defense, which is ridiculous for one player's absence. But after that, there are some depth problems there. They have to continue to develop young players. They've lost some coaching talent with their assistant coaches moving on. Al Harris is now not there anymore. He was really responsible for that secondary. These are all issues, and I think they're probably going to catch up. Again, if their top line talent stays on the field, they can look really good on any given week. Over the course of a long season, it's tough to hold up if you don't have depth.
Where's the NFC stack up amongst the other divisions?
Oh, the NFC East. It's a strong division, but it's tough to top the North. I mean, the North had 3 teams with 11 wins or more, which was ridiculous last year. So I think it's tough because when you get in, I think they're above the South pretty clearly, because I think the Buccaneers are still the class of the South until proven otherwise. The West is going to surprise people. The Rams are always tough. The Seahawks should have won that division last year. I think Mike Mack learned his lesson, and he's not going to take his foot off the gas. So that's going to be a dogfight. Niners had a down year, but they tend to rebound pretty hard after a down year in San Francisco. Arizona looks like they'll be a solid mid team, and I don't mean that as a backhanded compliment. They are putting together a very solid program, which they haven't had for years. So that's a pretty good division. I would say it probably goes north, west, east, south for me if I'm stacking the NFC.
As we're all kind of looking up at the Eagles, trying to get what they've created and sign Willie Lampkin today. I mean, talk about, not building the offensive line 1 through 5, but 1 through 11 or
yeah, like 14, because I'm going to trade 3 of them. Yeah, no, that's a great.
You got to feel bad about yourself when you release an offensive lineman and the Eagles picks him up. You got to be thinking, well, I must not have thought that one through if the Eagles want him. However, is that the biggest difference between the Eagles and the rest of the division? Is that they have the most complete roster 1 through 53?
Yes, they do, but it's also Jeff Lurie. It's also Howie and how he's empowered to run that organization. He leaves no stone unturned. He's one of my favorite GMs because you're talking about free agency, trades, the draft, UDFAs, like signing folks during the cutdown. He just doesn't stop. And a lot of teams in his position would stop. They would say, hey, we won the Super Bowl. We're the class of the division. We just got to manage our cap now. Not how he's still bringing in, 20 UDFAs and signing, 5 of them, and then picking the best off other teams' rosters and trading away assets from his own to recoup picks. He is always working. And when you look at that organization, then you add in the coaching, guys like Jeff Stoutland, obviously. But Nick Sirianni's held that thing together. I'm not sure that I think he's the best tactical head coach, but as a CEO, it's tough to argue that he hires amazing assistants. Vic Fangio transformed that defense. Like, when you look at ownership, GM, coaching, roster, the Eagles are tough to beat league-wide.
How do you have the quarterbacks ranked in the division?
Commanders and then Eagles for me. And I know that might surprise a few people with Jalen Hurts accolades, but Jaden was a revelation in year 1. I had him as QB2 coming out. I was not particularly surprised. He was in my top tier because of his ceiling, and he got closer to his ceiling as a rookie than I think anybody, including me, thought he would. His improvement over the course of the year was something to behold, and he's not done yet. He's not at his ceiling. Given that and how well he performed really in the back half of the season from week 12 on, the transformation in his game from that point on and how he propelled that team down the stretch, boy, the future could not be brighter for Jaden Daniels. So Jalen, I think, is a tremendous tactician. He is incredibly smart and tough, and he is efficient in big spots when he needs to pass the ball. I think people still remember him as a freshman at Alabama and sort of adversely knock his passing. He's not that player anymore. He is a very good and very complete player, great leader. But when you're looking at like who I would take if I was starting a team straight up, it would be Jaden Daniels for me because he's already bringing so much to the table. And he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now. And within 2 to 3 years, he could be top 5. And that's rare air. And for everybody saying, oh, I think he'll be there soon. You got to remember, like Josh Allen took 3 or 4 years. Lamar took 3 or 4 years. Patrick Mahomes, he's the exception. I'm not comparing anybody to Patrick Mahomes. But, you're talking about it would be those 3, maybe one other guy. And then Jaden, that is the upper crust of the NFL. So give him a couple of years. You're already well ahead of schedule, and he's already really good.
This is not necessarily an NFC East question, but with Jaden Daniels' success, with kind of the success that Bo Nix had last year, will the NFL slowly get back to appreciating and coveting quarterbacks that have spent more time in college? It seemed like 3 years ago, the Anthony Richardsons of the world were kind of what everybody wanted. We'll take the traits and we'll sort it out. The problem is, as you know this, EJ, the NFL is not a sorted out type business. They don't have that kind of time. Coaches in college don't either. They're trying to win games right away. So one doesn't necessarily help the other. It feels like we're getting to a point where experience is back to being important.
The pendulum always swings in the NFL for all things. And this is a great question. And it had definitely swung towards traits, and we've got to have the supernova or else we can't compete with the Josh Allens and the Lamars and the Patrick Mahomes. So what does it matter if we get a solid starter? Well, solid starters are more rare than you might think in the NFL. And again, you said it. It is a right now league. There is not a developmental timeline. I read somewhere this week that the NFL is not a learning league, and that is so true when it comes to the quarterback position. There is not a 3 to 5 year timeline for anybody. Coaches, GMs, forget it. You can't say I've got a 5-year plan anymore. It doesn't exist in the NFL. So you've got to get somebody that can play now, and therefore the pendulum is swinging back. Whether or not all teams will embrace that, I think nuance does matter. Context does matter. What was that experience in college? Is it skills that are translatable? Was he in multiple systems? Did he have to learn, multiple coaches? Because he will in the NFL if he spends any time there. Those are all really relevant things. But guys like Bo Nix that were at big programs and succeeded in both of them. Jaden, who moved from one program to another. There are guys, and we are seeing it, that guys that have a lot of reps, and some guys even like the backup quarterback the Bears just signed, right? Bagent. Like, he spent a lot of time at a lower level of football, but he was incredibly experienced in terms of number of downs. Now, he had to make a huge jump when he got to the league, but he did it and he overcame that. So I think, yes, the pendulum is swinging back. It still depends on what kind of experience we're talking about, but I think the league is appreciating the value of the blend. And again, experience is gaining a little bit more weight. You still need traits to win in the NFL. It's the best athletes in the world. And if you don't have both, you won't be there. I look at a guy like Kellen Moore, who was elite between the years. He's coach of the Saints now, not surprising as a quarterback, but he didn't have the arm to keep up in the NFL. It wasn't his fault. It just wasn't a thing. He was going to be a career backup clip holder. And now he's a coach, and that makes good sense, but you still have to have a balance.
I was surprised when you had the Giants at 3, just because it does. I guess I was more surprised just because a lot of people aren't saying that. I actually appreciate it. I think the Giants are going to be a little bit better than people realize. We'll sort the quarterback situation out for them in a second. But, with Andrew Thomas back, if they've kind of got that offensive line reworked a little bit, I think it could be better than people realize. The defensive line might be the deepest in all of the NFL. That's
correct.
Makes me a little nervous on week 1 as my newly constructed Commanders offensive line looks at that group over there. The defense of it as a whole, I think, is pretty good there. I like the young tight end they got out of Penn State last year. And the running back group, is more than serviceable. So if they get competent quarterback play, EJ,
that's right,
I think they can be a pretty good football team and maybe surprise some people, kind of like the Commanders did last year. But what will that quarterback situation look like?
Right.
Because the reason the Commanders were able to surprise people last year, as you said, was the brilliance of Jaden Daniels. To me, I like Jackson Dart. I'm a fan. I was a fan of his at Ole Miss. You know, I'm a Georgia guy, so I watch a lot of SEC football. And Jackson Dart stood out to me a lot when given a lot of the reins of that football program. To me, this is what I've always thought, all the way back to when Gruden was with the Redskins and they were worried about quarterbacks. To me, the GM and head coach are on the hot seat. If it were me, I would not be trying to win games with Russell Wilson. I'd be trying to prove to ownership that Jackson Dart's the guy and we're the guys to get it out of him.
Yep.
Coaches never do that. I don't understand why. It seems simple to me. What say you?
Oh, it's tough. Well, you don't have to watch the Giants episode now because you just summarized it pretty much the way we said it, which is the defensive line is probably the best in the NFL. And that's a big claim. But when you look at the talent they've assembled there, it's tough to argue. Linebackers have been good and serviceable. They are still that. The secondary was in big trouble. They reinforced the secondary with some choices that we really like this year. And again, I think that will help some of the pieces that were already there play a little bit better. Now, depends on a rebound for Javon Holland, some other things, but really like Paulson Adebo. And I think Deonte Banks will look better when he's not being counted on to be the guy. When he's like, cornerback 2 or 3, that'll be a better situation for him. So the defense is rock solid, and teams with rock solid defenses tend to go pretty far. The running game, like you said, offensive line looks like it might be the best offensive line they've had in the last 3-4 years pretty easily. And Dable can coach. Like, he did get this Daniel Jones team to the playoffs, mostly through Daniel Jones's legs, if they get competent quarterbacking. And I'm with you. I would rather see the potential of Dart because I do think there is something there that's good. He showed that spark in the preseason. He showed that at Ole Miss. He is tough. He's a great leader. He has a few too many YOLO throws, but all quarterbacks coming into the NFL need to figure that out. And they figure it out in practice and joint practices in preseason. How can I fit that ball in there? Can I fit that ball in there? Oh, I can't. Okay, I got to dial that one back. And if he learns that, and I think he can, he's got great legs. He's second best runner in this class, behind only Jalen Milroe. There's a lot there. The problem with that happening, as much as you and I would like to see it, is the schedule. The schedule is brutal. This is the Giants' schedule weeks 3 through 8. Chiefs, Chargers, Saints, Eagles, Broncos, Eagles. Like, that's some of the toughest defenses in the NFL for 5 out of 6 straight weeks. They get a little bit of a break against New Orleans, but like, you're going up against Spagnuolo, you're going up against Jesse Minter with the Chargers, then you've got the Eagles and Vic, and then you got the Broncos defense, which could be the number 1 overall defense in the league this year. Then you got the Eagles again. Like, inserting a rookie into that schedule is asking for him to get chewed up. Like, that is tough sledding. So after week 8, which, again, we'll see how they fare through those weeks with presumably Russ at quarterback. After week 8, if it's sliding, I think you absolutely pivot if you're Dable for exactly the reason you said. Jackson Dart's our future. Look what we could do in the back half of the season. Give us another shot. Because if Mara doesn't believe that, I believe the seats are pretty warm. And it would be rough on Jackson Dart. I would like, trust me, as a Chicago fan, I do not like quarterbacks coming in with lame duck coaches. Not my favorite thing. So I would like to see that marriage work. And again, when Brian Dable has had competent quarterbacking, going back to Buffalo, his offenses are quite good. So that's the real linchpin for them. I'm higher on the running back room than you are. I think it's very deep. It's varied. They're going to be able to throw a lot of looks at you. And Dable's a creative coach. He can use all those. So when you really look at it, like, improved offensive line, I think deep running back room, tight end room, kind of sneaky. Wide receiver room, not super deep, but Malik Neighbors is Malik Neighbors. And the defense we already talked about, that's a better team than a lot of people are giving it credit for.
I agree. And as far as the running back room, I think that's just because I'm not as high on Scatterboo. I think there's a lot of other people are. So I think that's one of the reasons people give that room a bump since they drafted him. What is it that the Cowboys did this offseason to try and improve the football team? Because other than Pickens, who obviously, again, as my homerism would say, I'm much higher on than I think the average person is. I think he's going to be able to open the route tree up there and be much more effective than he ever was in Pittsburgh. but it doesn't feel like they did a whole lot to catch up to the rest of the division.
I don't think they nonetheless catch up. I don't even really think they necessarily kept pace. And that's
Right.
why I've got them in fourth place of the division, is because, look, if you got Dak and CD and Pickens out there, again, the running back room, we'll see. Like, Javonte's been down for a couple of years. I was a huge Javonte Williams guy, but obviously injury took a lot out of him. Now 2 years removed for that. Is he ready for a little bit of a bounce back? And I talked about this on the Cowboys episode. He doesn't need a huge bounce back. Reminds me of the year that Zeke got like almost 1,000 yards, getting 4.1 per carry. Like, that can work behind the Cowboys offensive line for the offense that Schottenheimer wants to run. But he does have to go from like 3.8 to 4.1 or 4.2 per carry, or else it's just not going to be efficient enough. And then all the pressure goes back on Dak. You have to pass protect for longer. He takes more hits. Injuries pile up. It's not a good scene. So you got to have a base level run game to get CD and Pickens out into those deeper routes, and then let Dak open up his arm. And he's quite good at that. I like their tight end. The defense, up and down, right? When Mike is out there, look, he covers up a lot of flaws. They're still having trouble stopping the run. Mozzie Smith hasn't been the guy they thought in the middle. They drafted, a guy out of UCLA I like, Jay Toya, but he's a rookie. He's got to hold up against all the monsters in the middle, especially in the NFC East. Those guards are no joke. And until they can stop the run in the middle, like, it's going to be Micah flashes and hopefully turnovers. The times that the Cowboys defense has been the best in recent years, they have generated a ton of turnovers, largely from their corners. So again, that's a very fickle thing. Interceptions go up and down every year, as you know. And if they can't generate that, they're going to be in a bunch of boat races, and they've got to keep the line healthy, and that's a question as well. So just more questions, I think, on the Cowboys than any other roster really in the whole division.
The offensive line certainly has been in flux the last couple of years for them. They signed Booker in the first round, which was, I guess, a surprise to some. He was moving up boards the closer we got to draft time. Are you a fan of Booker?
It's funny. I think Booker is a great player in a very limited area. Within about a 5-yard circle, he is a monster. And I mean, monster right now, man-child can play in a league, and that's rare. If he gets his hands on you, it's pretty much over. He will control you and move you where he wants to. He is a bear. And it's the foot speed. He is not quick. He's not particularly agile. That means that you can kind of hide him. You can use backside cutoffs. Again, Alabama found a way to make it work. But if you're talking about like counter pulls to the opposite side,
no chance.
Forget it. He's not going to make it there. The linebacker's just going to run around him. So you have to know that and just play to his strengths. Man, power, gap, duo, get him on people quickly, have him control him, move him out of gaps, have the other player on duo move off to the second level. And, opponents are going to know that too. But I think Booker is really good at what he does. I just think what he does is a narrow lane. So I wasn't surprised. This was a trust the NFL moment, which I tend not to do as much as I used to as a young analyst. But I was at the combine. I asked everybody I could. And I mean, other analysts, guys that work for teams, guys that work with agents, trainers, you name it. Anybody I could get my hands on, college guys, pro guys, said, what do you think of Booker? Everybody. And I mean, everybody to a person said he's going first round. And I was like, are you sure about that? And everybody, and I don't care where they were coming from, was locked down. And that's really rare in the NFL space to have that level of agreement. Usually it's like, hey, 70% of people say, It was like 95% of people I talked to at the combine over 9 days there, which is hundreds of people, were like, nope, 100% he's going round one. And I was like, really? I'm not so sure. Like, sure enough, like, he was seen as a lock by NFL personnel evaluators. Regardless of what I thought of the shortcomings, they thought the strengths were high enough that he was a shoo-in for the first round, and that's the way it turned out.
You think that's a floor type thing? Like, his floor is high enough that you can bet on him and not feel like you're gonna.
I think it's pretty safe. I think you know what you're getting with Booker. Like, is there a lot more ceiling there? I'm not sure there is. Like, he's not going to get a lot quicker, but he's already elite. I would say top 15% in the NFL strong for an NFL offensive lineman. And he's got good technique in that phone booth area. Like, he's not just a brawler that doesn't know what he's doing. He's technically proficient as an offensive lineman, and he's got elite tools. So I think when you start looking at that and you look at the very low bust rate for interior offensive line in round one, people were like, what are we talking about here? Like, yeah, he can't run. We know, but look at the Alabama tape. That's what you're getting. That'll play in the NFL right now on day one. Like, I don't need to project him to anything.
All right, to the Commanders we go. They to me, they turned the two worst position groups they had last year, offensive line and cornerback room, into two of the bigger strengths on the team. I mean, if the reports are true that teams are looking at Noah Igbenogany in a trade, cornerback 5. I mean, this is a former first round pick who played well last year when he got his chances. How, if any, did the Commanders close the gap with the Eagles?
I think they did close the gap. That is a yes. That is a positive. They made moves to try and catch the Eagles. As we talked about at the top of the show, the Eagles are very tough to catch. So did they catch them or close that gap fully? They did not. And that would be a tough thing to do for any team. I do like the moves the Commanders have made in the secondary. I really like the pick of Trey Amos. The offensive line looks more solid this year than it did. And Von Miller's a sneaky ad. I know everybody's like, he's a million years old. If you watch this tape of Buffalo at the end of last season, not the beginning, when he was in the designated pass rush role for the Bills at the end of last season, he kind of looked like old Vaughn a little bit. Not all the way, but enough that that's a worthwhile signing if they use him in that role and really protect him in the early part of the season and don't just put a lot of downs on his plate.
Commanders beat reporter said his burst is still elite to see it in person.
The offensive lineman for the Commanders said the same thing. There was one of them being interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, man, all this old man Vaughn stuff is crap. Like, and then Vaughn came out a couple of weeks ago also and said, I think technique and moves are overrated. And I'm like, well, easy for you to say, Von Miller, with elite Hall of Fame tools. Sure, if you have a burst like yours, yeah, but very few people do. So he's still got it. I think if they use him correctly, it is a bigger ad than some people are giving it credit for. Is that enough? It's not enough to close the gap to the elite team that won the Super Bowl pretty much going away. Is it, again, we talked about the Cowboys, enough to like keep pace or improve a little bit, make up some ground? I think they did make up some ground. That's hard to do because all the other teams are moving at the same time. But if I look at the Commanders offseason, I say, yeah, I like most of the moves they made. They didn't have as many pieces to play with. Their draft was not as big as a lot of other classes. And, but I think they made smart moves on the personnel side. And again, they have to hold up and they kind of have to expect some regression. And that's not because they're going to play worse, but nobody thought they were getting to the NFC Championship game.
Sure.
Nobody. Like, the odds on that, if you'd put odds on that before the season, you would be buying a house with the winnings. Like, nobody had that. And it reminds me of when Cincinnati did it with Joe Burrow. And they were like, hey, they're a year early. You get a great quarterback and you're a year early. And then sure enough, the Bengals regressed a little bit the next year because you're just way ahead of schedule. If they'd made the playoffs last year, that would have been, in my mind, slightly ahead of schedule with a rookie quarterback. Well, they didn't just do that. They went all the way to the Final Four. So expecting that again isn't particularly reasonable. So regression is not a dirty word. It's what's going to happen. And they can still be a good team, make the playoffs, be in the dance, and be very dangerous. So I think that's kind of where you have to set your sights. I think they have more tools to do it. But like any team, Doug, if you're picking this roster apart and you're looking at a couple of turned ankles, you're like, ooh, I hope not. I hope not right there, because that would be rough.
The state of the roster post Ron Rivera, and I hate to dig on Ron because he's gone and he's been gone, but it was somebody put out today that the Commanders actually have the oldest roster in the league at this point.
Yes,
and it's just because they've had to go out and use so many veterans because there was just nothing. You know why they haven't given any extensions in a while, except for Terry McLaurin? They didn't have anybody worth giving extensions to. I think there's only 3 people left on the team from the Ron Rivera era. So it's like, yes, you are right. The depth is slowly coming along, but you're right, particularly the wide receiver room. Thank God Terry's back, because they had not much left at all. You had brought up earlier, and also about the regression, there's just little to no chance, being realistic, that the team can do what they did last year on fourth down this year. I mean, it was just
80+% on fourth down I don't think people properly appreciate, especially with a rookie quarterback, like how bananas that number is. Like, it's out of this world. It's crazy.
And also, you're talking about the end of the year. I say this all the time. You're talking about the end of the year with Jaden. Jaden Daniels took that team and put it on his back and said, we're going to win some football games here down the stretch and in the playoffs. And in the NBA, EJ, you can do that, right? 6 guys, one superstar can pick them all up and run you to the end. It just doesn't happen in football. And it really, every week, it was just like, here was Jaden saying, listen, come on, fellas, we're going to do this. I don't like losing. And here we go. That was something I just don't think I've ever seen before, maybe outside of the Brady and Manning eras, where they just would figure it out. They would do it mentally. I think some of it was mental. A lot of it, of course, was just his God-given physical ability to just get out and move when it's only one man in the hole. One of the things I think will help with regression, one, they got all of the coaching staff back on offense, which is huge. All the key players that they wanted back on offense, they've gotten back on offense. They add Laramie Tunsil. They add Debo Samuels. They add Josh Connolly Jr. I'm curious, after I say this, whether you think he'll actually start the season or whether they'll let him get a couple of games under his belt. But I think the additions of those, and particularly the offensive line, will allow Cliff to do some things that he probably just wasn't willing to do because of the state of the offensive line last year. So I do think that while the tape is out from last year, I think what they want to do and can do this year will be quite different than what it was last year.
It's true. And they're also going to get teams full respect this year. And look, Washington had been so down bad for so long. You talked about the Ron Rivera era, and it's not fair to pin it on Ron, and you know that because of everything else, right? The ownership, how that front office was really structured and operated with it, and no coach was going to succeed. So Ron did the best he could, and the results weren't good enough, and that roster's been cleaned out, and the entire organization from the owner down has been remade, and that's rare in the NFL, but they redid it the right way. The fact they had so much success in the first year of that regime is beyond incredible. Yes, Cliff looked at the offensive line last year and said, no, there are definitely some 7-step drop stuff that I'm not going to call. There's some 5-step drop stuff I'm not going to call. It does depend on health. Laramie Tunsil is elite when he's healthy. He has not been fully healthy for years. He has not played a full schedule in a long time. So the Commanders are hoping that he is as healthy as possible. Josh Connerly, I love. He was my second best pure left tackle in this draft in terms of pass protection. Got to see him up close a couple of times once the combine, was also down at his pro day in Eugene, and really, really impressive player that I think, again, has all the things you need and can continue to develop. Can he do it all right now? He cannot, but his tools are rare and his technique's already really good. So you can work with that, especially in a passing league. Does he start? If Laramie Tunsil goes down, he definitely gets a bunch of starts this year. Would it be better for him to sit and look? Maybe. Some tackles want to get in there. I mean, some offensive linemen in general just want to get in there, get their reps. Like quarterback, right? You can only take so many mental reps. You got to be out on the field and see the speed, see the moves, get beat, go, oh, it's the same for corners and everything else. So, Connerly seems like a gamer to me in mindset, just having talked to him a couple of times briefly. He seems wired the right way for the position. So I don't think that would hurt. Like if they said, hey, you're going out there and starting, he wouldn't be like, oh, I was hoping to have it a little more. He'd be like, cool. All right, let's go. And he's going to take his lumps, but he's also very, very talented. And I was not alone in that. Guys like Brian Baldinger really liked him. Nate Tice really liked him. He had fans, because when you really dug into that tape, the skills were very translatable to the NFL. And that's not always the case with college offensive linemen. So really like Josh Connerly. Again, it depends on health, but Cliff's going to have a few more options. And also with the skill position players, right? He's got a different running back room composition this year, so he can do a few different things with it. Yes, they needed Terry back in the worst possible way. That's why I said is like, this is all kind of moot. Like they're going to give Terry what they're going to give him. He doesn't have a ton of leverage. They do need him back. He's a leader. Again, look at that wide receiver room without him and go, that's a winning wide receiver room in the NFL. It's not. Like, it's just not. And again, if he, knock on wood, goes down for a couple of weeks, it's not going to be great. I really think the Commanders should be all over the waiver wire today. Kendrick Bourne came available. I would kick the tires. Like, I'm not saying go get him, but is he better than who you have at 3 or 4? He might be. Like, on demonstrated ability, he might be. And there's other guys out there as well. And I would be, if I was Peters, I would be looking to get some of the good young wide receivers that still need a little seasoning and seeing if I could say, hey, do you want to come play with Jaden Daniels? You know, you're going to be on the practice squad a little bit. I can't sign you the active roster probably, but like, as those guys float in and off the back of practice squads, that roster churn, I would be sniping those guys if I was Washington.
Couple more on Connerly. Am I right? He's like the opposite of Booker. What he needs is strength, right? Like,
yeah.
It feels like if he had gone back to college and gotten stronger, he'd have been a top 10 type pick the following year.
It's funny because it really depends on what coaches want. Like, as an elite mover, I mean, he looks like a basketball player. Right. And I don't mean physically, like in his build. His build type looks like an offensive lineman. He moves like a basketball player. He has the feet. He's got the coordination in his hands. Yep. And he's got great length. So when you watch him move, that translates very directly. Now, what he doesn't necessarily have is go dig that guy out one-on-one in a run play.
Right.
Right. He's a good angle blocker. He's good technically. He can wall people off. His hands can use to get stronger, but he's not super old either. So he's still got room to grow there. But a lot of coaches will prioritize that pass protection in a pass first league and say, look, we can, like you said, with the quarterbacks, we can figure out the rest, right? He is going to get stronger in an NFL training regimen. That's for sure. We can't build feet into somebody that doesn't have them. So we're going to take this length and this movement ability and this technical prowess. He's very good on his angles and pass sets. He doesn't usually fire his hands too early. He can be very patient with his hands. He's an advanced pass blocker already, which is great. And yeah, he needs to get some sand in the pants, and he's going to figure that out real quick if he does play in the NFC East, because look, there's a lot of dogs on the other side, and they're going to give him his welcome moments, but he's going to hold up in pass pro. He's going to frustrate some of those guys, and I think they'll be a little bit surprised by that.
With Tunsil here for the foreseeable future, where Connerly will move over to the right side. We've seen this a couple of times recently, but I've also talked to offensive linemen that play tackle and say, hey, listen, eat your cereal with your left hand and then try eating it with your right hand for a while. Yep. It's not quite as easy as it may appear. How is that jump? I mean, is it too easy? Is it easy for the average fan to say, oh, great, you put Connerly on the right side and you've got two bookend tackles. The man's never played right tackle before.
Yeah, it's very case by case. And the way that I tried to figure this out was when I went to OLM, Duke Manny Weathers, offensive line masterminds down in Dallas. I asked about this, like, how do you see it? You, whoever I was talking to. And it's very personal. Some guys, no problem. And I asked the follow-up question, or the lead question I often asked was guard tackle switch, right? Because fans do the same thing. Oh, well, he's not a tackle, he's a good guard. Not necessarily. It's a different skill set. Some guys between guard and tackle, totally fine. But right to left, not fine at all. Other guys, right to left, don't care. Guard to tackle, nope. And some guys, very rare guys like Elgin Jenkins, who plays for the Packers, guard, tackle, center even, right, left, don't care. Those guys are so incredibly valuable because you can literally plug them in anywhere. And that is a rare skill set. Now, right to left, it just depends on the guy. It's always going to take some level of adjustment, but some guys, it's like a couple of days in practice and they're fine. They don't care. They literally say, no, I'm good either way. Now, everybody wants to say that if it's a job interview, but once you already have your job, you can get a little bit picky with that. Other guys are very much, Christian Haynes, who just got put on IR by the Hawks. He was a right guard, and I mean right guard. He had something like 1,100 snaps, and they were all at right guard. He never played another position, not left, not center, nothing. So some guys kind of locked in, hey, he's a right guard. Other guys, hey, he's an interior offensive lineman. We see guys with guard center flexibility. Other guys, hey, can float between guard and tackle. They're probably a better guard. Cool. But only the right side, only the left side. You really have to ask the player and then work them. Right. You got to get them on the field and try it a couple times because guys will say, oh, yeah, I can do anything because they want the job. And then you get them out there and try and get them in a left-handed pass set. And you're like, oh, buddy, like, no, you can't do that. So it really does depend, but it's completely individual. It's certainly not a boilerplate thing where you can just say every, tackle who isn't long enough can be a guard and, every left can be a right. Now, I will say tackle has become a lot more homogenous in the NFL because pass rushers are going to move. So as long as you're comfortable with your movements, it's not, oh, you're always getting the best pass rusher on the left side, which you were 10 years ago. Now they're going to put the best pass rusher wherever the weakest tackle is. So you better have two good ones and they both better be able to pass protect.
One of the nice things that the Commanders were able to do in the draft this year, we talked about Connerly. When Connerly goes in a right tackle and they've got the left tackle set in Tunsil, it allows them to move last year's draft pick, Brandon Coleman, into guard, where he is actually better suited, which means you're upgrading two spots at one time. When we look at the cornerback room, they did the same thing with the guy you mentioned earlier in Trey Amos, that allows them to get their second round pick from last year, Sainristil, back into the nickel, which is where they want him. I mean, think about this, EJ. Last year it was Benjamin St. Juste and Emmanuel Forbes outside. They were so bad that they had to kick Sainristil outside, bring in Igbenogany, and then put whatever was left of Lattimore's knee on the field last year, waiting for him. They knew that was not ready last year. That was more of a move for this year, I believe. But then you look at this year, and you've got Lattimore, who by all counts is healthy and looking like himself again. Trey Amos, who has apparently been a revelation at camp. I mean, this is a guy.
He's a great corner. I really like him.
He's got future number one type corner ability. And like I said, they love Sainristil in that nickel spot. So in a division, in a league full of receivers, particularly in a division with the Eagles, with two premier receivers and a good tight end, and you've already mentioned Malik Neighbors in a bucket by himself. We can just leave it at that. And then the two premier pass rushers or pass catchers that they have in Dallas. The quarterback room better be ready for action. It feels like the Commanders have one this year that will be ready for the action.
And I love the point you made about bringing a guy in and putting him at his natural position that allows another player to return to his better position. That happens on the offensive line, certainly happens in the secondary, has happened for the Commanders here. Just a word about Sainristil, like his progression starting at nickel when he did, and then having to move outside late in the year. Again, being a guy that's new to corner in general, has only had a few years in the position. His progress was as amazing as Jaden Daniels. It was just less heralded. And that was really impressive. He made a move for me in a way from like, ooh, the potential's there. He's smart. He's a very tough player, but he's got a lot of technical lapses because he's so new at corner. He's still figuring it out. Then he got in and it was nickel, and then they're going to move him, right? And I'm like, oh, don't move him. They move him, and he keeps getting better outside. And you're like, oh, okay, he can handle it. Now, taking a guy like that, he reminds me of, a lot of players in the NFL right now. The guy on my team, Kyler Gordon, is that sort of everything DB. He can play outside, but he's far better being able to be lined up on the inside and taking advantage of matchups, right? It's like a pass rusher. You can put him up near the line. You can put him on the back. You can put him on a tight end if you need to. You can put him on a big slot. It's no problem. He's that flexible. Sainer still reminds me of guys like that in the league who are really the new norm. Like, you need to have one of those guys, and he looks like he's up to the task. Again, you get Lattimore back, and when he's healthy, he's elite. And Trey, I loved coming out. He was one of my top corners. He's got great size. He's played against all these guys in the SEC. He's seen them before. He'll still have his welcome to the league moments, but he's got the tools. Like, if he figures it out mentally, he'll be right there. And again, that top level depth is really good. After that, not as good, but that's the way it is in most corner rooms. It's kind of like offensive line. You're not going to have typically 3 elite outside corners and a great nickel. Now, if you're Denver, you're the best secondary in the league. There you are. Cool. If you're Philly last year, as soon as Cooper came in, like, that was the best secondary working in the back half of the NFL. So it's a rarity, it's a luxury, but that top level depth stacks up really nicely. If they stay healthy and Trey develops as Mike did last year, they're in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, you imagine they brought in Jonathan Jones from New England thinking he was going to be the outside starting corner opposite of Marshawn because they brought him in for the draft, and you get Amos and a depth peep. So, yeah, a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps there in the secondary, which is nice.
And we got to talk about Quan. We got to talk about Quan. Quan's my guy.
Listen,
Quan's great. He's such a tough piece of that secondary. I met him, followed him during the draft process. And I talked to the guy that really sometimes we have these feelings. Like you said, you didn't listen to our episode beforehand, so you can be surprised. I don't read any draft stuff, as little as I can during the entire draft process until I've done my reports. Then I'll read everything I can and see like where I stack up on guys. Occasionally I get out of that envelope because I saw Quan Martin fairly early in the process, and I ran into Jordan Reed, who does draft stuff for ESPN. Great follow. And I said to Jordan, I said, man, what do you think about Quan? And like before I finished, he was like, I freaking love him. He's a dog. Like, yes. And I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, cause he wasn't being talked about early in the process. So Quan is amazing. I love him in that secondary. He brings toughness. He brings versatility. Again, like I talked about, a little bit less so than Mike, but like still you can move him all over. He can play down in the box. He can play deep. Really, really like Quan. He's I want to say glue guy, but glue guy is always like the not talented guy that just does all the things. Quan is a talented glue guy, if that makes any sense.
That can run. Played last year with 2 separated shoulders for most of the season, which is insane. To your point, you mentioned Jordan Reed, and you're absolutely right. I'll do you the same. We had Jim Nagy on right after the draft.
Oh yeah,
and he said I would have taken Quan Martin over Brian Branch in that draft. I think he's got more upside because of the speed. Now you can take that as a hot take. We don't have to sit here and debate.
I really like Brian Branch, so I like. But in the same breath,
speed, I think that he was saying, like the ceiling with Quan, if he can ever get there with the athletic ability, is something to behold. I'm with you. I would have liked Brian Branch in that draft. But I think this is the year that Quan Martin really can do it. And they obviously think that Will Harris is an upgrade over what they had last year.
Yeah, and I think for Quan, he's been doing it, and I think people will start to recognize it a little bit more. And it takes a couple of years. The NFL is a very inertia-bound league, right? People just like, who? I hadn't heard of him. Oh, now I've heard him a couple times. Oh, now I've heard him for the last 3 years. Oh, he's good. Well, he's been good for 2 or 3 years.
Well, and it took him a while to get him back there to that free safety spot where he really belonged.
Yeah, they did move him around a lot.
They did. And as you know, that's tough. It'd be nice to be able to leave a guy in a spot, particularly early on, and then build him into the other positions. A lot of coaches do that, right? They're like, well, we're going to dabble him in a bunch of things and then see what he's good at. I hate that philosophy personally.
I don't mind it early. Like early in camp, rookie mini camp, figuring out what you got, moving around, moving offensive linemen around, like you said. Like, is he going to stick at guard? Do we put him at tackle? Is he comfortable left or right? Like, give him a couple down. Same in the secondary. Like, does he have to be a box guy? Can we put him in man? Like, is man going to work for him, or is he his own guy? Does he have to have his eyes at the quarterback? Like, move him around a little bit, but like settle pretty quickly if they're rookies. Pick the thing that they look good at, or the 2 things that they look good at, the package they look good at, whatever it is for wherever it is you drafted them, and then plug them in and let them learn, because the load, I think that's one of the things that NFL fans don't appreciate at all. Like the mental load of getting to the NFL for any player. I don't care what system you came from. Your playbook is 3 times thicker. I don't care. Right. Offense, defense, special teams, whatever. And then if you're talking about like wide receivers and you're like, oh, he's got to learn every wide receiver route, you're talking about sight adjustments. You're talking about hot goes. You're talking about everything. And you're talking about that times 3 or 4 in certain systems. It's immense. Like the mental load. I don't care how smart you are. It's just a lot of information to retain. So limit that. Let folks get good at it. Then, hey, if they're one of the rare ones, they can take it on. Cool, man. Open up the book, pour it on them. But not everybody can. And that's proven every single year in the NFL, because it gets whispered a lot. People don't like to talk about it, but because people think you're calling somebody dumb, it's just the ability to like process information. It's not intelligence. It's just there's so much of it that you hear whispers every year from camps like, hey man, I thought that guy was really talented. Like, why can't get the playbook right? He's just making mental mistakes. It's not that he's a bad physical player. We just have to tailor it down some, and we're getting to the point where he can get on the field, but that's how it happens.
If this Commanders team doesn't get to where they want to go, it will be because of why?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I love it. Probably injuries, I would say. And then just talent coming to catch and bite them. Like they are not as good a roster as the top teams in the NFC. Like their roster is not as deep as Detroit. Their roster is not as deep as the Eagles, which we've talked about also. And it's unfortunate they're in your division, but like that's the standard right now for roster building. That is the standard. There's nobody doing it better. And just expectation. There's so much expectation. This, like that area. Like I spent a little bit of time growing up right in between Washington and Baltimore, and at that point, the Washington football team was everything, right? Yeah. And then decades, like literally a couple of decades of being down bad and everybody forgetting about you. There was this pent, like, man, we want them to be good so bad, but they're just not. And it's really hard to root for the owner, everything else. And like that lid came off last year. So there's all this explosion of support and the new stadium and the success. And hey, we can root for this team again. It's fun and it feels good. Like there's so much expectation. Expectation is a weight, right? You can get ahead of yourself.
Yes.
You can start looking to the, 3 weeks out, we're going to play the Eagles. You got a game this week. Every team in the NFL is tough. So they're just going to have to sort of, I think Dan Quinn can keep them focused and doing the things they need to do and kind of forgetting about last year as much as they can. Cause every team in the NFL has to do that. That it's almost 40% roster turnover typically around the NFL for every team. That's a lot. So every team is a new team and you got to kind of start over. And if they start over and build the base, they'll be fine. Injuries could get them, especially at tackle. Like I know they drafted Connolly, but he is a rookie. If Laramie Tunsil goes down for an extended period of time, it's a very different outlook. You're back to last year, which was still pretty good. But when you have that combined with expectations, it can be really rough. Like, oh, I thought, we were going to be 6-2 at this point and we're not. It happens. You got to just stay with it. Every quarter of the season is different even, and you're not going to look in, late November like you looked in late September. You just have to, there's a lot involved with getting through an NFL season and adapting and changing. Dan Quinn's got a great staff for that. And look, I don't think Jaden's going to fall off a cliff. I really don't think sophomore slump's going to be a thing for him. He might not hit the levels he hit last year, but that's just because we talked about it earlier. Like those are astronomical. Yeah. Even if he's 10% below that, he's still going to be excellent. So not really worried about him. It's just, there's key positions where, again, what if Lattimore goes down again? Okay, well, now you're relying on that depth. And the great Marv Levy quote, depth is great until you have to use it.
EJ, one of my favorite days of the year is when we get to do this. I appreciate you giving me the time today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. This is a fun team to talk about again, and I love doing it.
Let's do it again when the Bears and the Commanders play this year.
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, buddy.